Welcome to Reactive 1. This is your orientation lecture. We're going to discuss what to expect in class when you come in with your reactive dog. We're going to discuss some dog basics. I'm going to introduce myself so you know a little bit more about me. And the most important thing I want you to get out of this is that you're not alone. A lot of us have reactive dogs. I have 4 of them. So my name is Emma Schneid-Kraut. I am a certified training professional both through the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers as well as through the Karen Pryor Academy, which is the clicker training academy. We will be using clickers in class. It is not a requirement, but I will talk to you about why I like the use of clickers, and it's some reasons why I like them, in particular with reactive dogs. But like I said, it's not a requirement, but we will be going over that as well. So I got my start at the Humane Society of Boulder Valley in Boulder, Colorado, doing behavior modification for shelter dogs. So these are some at-risk populations, so we would do training in order for them to be adoption candidates. These were dogs with resource guarding issues, dog-dog reactivity, some human fear, other fear-based behaviors, touch sensitivity. It really ran the gamut. So I definitely have a passion for dogs with more troubling behaviors and getting them to a point where they can live peaceably in our homes. So I have, like I said, I have 4 dogs. My eldest dog, Boris, is 12 years old. I got him when he was 8 months old. He really has been easy. The squeaky wheels get the grease. My second eldest dog, Sugar, is the dog who actually got me into training. When I first met Sugar, she was cowering in the corner growling. I couldn't touch her. I couldn't handle her. She was afraid of literally everything. I lived in an apartment, and she was incredibly reactive. I had to walk her. The moment my apartment door opened, it was hackles up, bark, 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 bark. She could not be contained or controlled. I got some really, really bad training advice that probably backstepped us. And then I got some really wonderful training at the Humane Society in Boulder. And I would say at this point, Sugar is my most normal dog. She is my proof positive that these methods work. I think she is the exception, not the rule, with how far she has come. But I want you to know I've been there. I am still there. I've got 2 younger dogs. I've got a dog named Gilda who we thought would never accept another dog, but then we brought in a foster dog, Agatha, and they are the best of friends. Both Agatha and Gilda are a bit fearful. Gilda has a tendency to be reactive to cars and trucks, as well as other dogs while on leash. And then Agatha, we're still getting to know her. We've only had her for a couple months. And that's one thing to keep in mind, is that behavior does change, and as dogs become more comfortable in their situations, and this may be your experience as well, sometimes we see more troubling behaviors develop. Sometimes we see troubling behaviors start to go away as they're comfortable with their people. So behavior is changing, but I want you to look at your dog as an individual that they are. So even if you had that perfect dog in the past, for one, I guarantee they weren't that perfect, or you have that perfect other dog, or you've had another dog of the same breed that you have right now. I don't want your expectations to match what the expectations of that dog were. I really want you training the dog in front of you. So, what is reactivity? My current working definition is an extreme emotional response or human perceived overreaction to a stimuli or multiple stimuli that is unequal to the threat. There's a few important components to that. I say extreme or overreaction instead of just reaction, because if your dog's not reacting, you may have invested in a stuffed dog. A reaction could be anything from, wiggling up to you or jumping up on you or smiling, but an overreaction is more what I'm guessing you're seeing in your reactive dog. That barking, lunging, spinning, whining at the end of the leash or at the window or at strangers coming into your home. That's more what I am talking about. But all of those other, even positive emotional responses are reactions as well. So I'd like to emphasize that it's more of an overreaction. And I say human perceived because our dogs are not wrong. They just don't know what else to do in these scenarios. So there are some contributing factors to reactivity that interplay with each other. You may, know for a fact that there was one triggering moment with one particular kind of dog, and now your dog goes ballistic every time they see that kind of dog or that kind of person or that kind of car. Most of us don't have the privilege of knowing exactly what it is that's triggered our dog's reactivity. So some things that contribute to reactivity are frustration and lack of choice. So inability to get away or inability to get to something that is either exciting or scary or any number of things. Fear. Trying to make the scary thing go away. I am frustrated. I can't choose to run away myself. I'm going to make a big loud noise and hopefully that thing or person or dog will go away. It is very often a learned behavior. So even if they are not successful, as in they bark and the thing goes away, they don't have a repertoire of other behaviors in that context. So practiced behavior continues and gets stronger, and that's why you might have seen mild reactivity early on, and now you're seeing more extreme reactivity. It's because they've had ample opportunity to practice and escalate. Some dogs have a genetic predisposition. Many dogs have been bred to really notice changes in their environment. Dogs naturally are bred to know that things are different than what they were a second ago. So this goes a lot to our dog's natural senses. They can smell things we can't smell. They hear things we can't hear. They're very, very astute at observing movement. Their vision may not be as great as ours, but they know something happened over there, whether it be by sound or by that peripheral movement. So our dogs are a combination, just like we are, of nature and nurture. So they have some innate drives. Their senses are different, as I said. They have about 10 times as many scent receptors as we do, or hundreds of times as many scent receptors as we do. They don't speak English. This is something that's very important to remember. They're speaking the language and they're trying to communicate very regularly, but they're not necessarily going to understand what we're saying. So when we're saying, no, stop, don't, cut it out, our dogs may perceive us as just joining in to the response that they are having. You may hear me say in class, don't repeat yourself, or don't talk so much. I will say sometimes with our reactive dogs, if you can get yourself in a nice happy tone and joyful, they might look at you and disengage from whatever it is that's causing the reaction. So it's not that language is bad when communicating with your dogs. It's just that they're not necessarily understanding the words. They are understanding your tone and they are understanding context. So our dogs learn safe from unsafe, not right from wrong. This is an important distinction. So even though we think it's embarrassing and troubling and scary when our dog reacts, they might stop reacting when we yell, but that's only because they know that our yelling indicates they are not safe. They are being punished, okay? Another example of this is your dog gets into the trash can. You come home, there's trash everywhere. You might see that, what we perceive as a guilty look on their face. Really what they're doing is preparing for punishment. They know trash on floor, mom or dad home means bad things for me. That doesn't mean it wasn't fun to get in the trash, and they aren't necessarily going to make the association I shouldn't have gotten in the trash. So we may need to manage that environment and make sure they can't get in the trash again. But it does not benefit learning to punish in that context. They respond and communicate very differently than we do. We are primates. We greet up front. We look each other in the eye. We smile. We reach out. All of these things could be perceived as threat signals to dogs. A look in the eye is an intense threat to a dog. A dog who means business will look you straight on, bring those ears forward, get as tall over another dog or you as possible, will bare their teeth, will get over the top. We're already at a disadvantage in that communication. So our dogs learn by associations and consequences. If it is rewarded, it will be repeated. If it is punished, it may or may not go away, and we will talk about the use of force in training. And remember, your dog is an individual, so treat them as such. Train the dog in front of you. They might have good days and bad days, just as you have good days and bad days. So we're going to be using positive reinforcement training. So remember, a dog will repeat a behavior if it is rewarded. The value of that reward is determined by your dog. That is very important to think about, because in the context of that fun squirrel to chase and your praise, I think the fun squirrel to chase will beat out praise. So rewards can be food, praise, attention, play, even access to chasing after that squirrel. We also want to manage to prevent the practice of undesirable behaviors. This is very, very important for our reactive dogs. So this could mean moving away. This could mean providing visual barriers at your fence or in your home to prevent your dog from barking, lunging at windows, or limiting access to certain areas. So our treats are used as a tool for learning, not a bribe. The positive association can actually help inhibit a reaction and facilitate learning. The rate of reward can often be reduced in less stressful situations, but we will try to keep a really high rate of reinforcement while we are teaching our dogs. And they can be faded a little more as behaviors become well learned and more predictable. So we will be focusing a lot on desensitization and counter-conditioning. So this is a slow and steady process of changing a dog's negative emotional response to specific stimuli, started at a level that does not cause a negative emotional reaction. So my goal in this class is never to have a reaction. I do not need to see the behavior to know it exists. I don't want our dogs getting in such an elevated state that they're not learning anymore. Counter-conditioning, teaching a dog that a previously triggering stimuli, that neighbor dog behind the fence over there, or that lawnmower over there, or that small child on a bicycle, predicts something positive for them, and we can create a new response out of that. So we're going to be using clicker or marker training. This is where we use a click, a word, or a visual stimuli to bridge the gap between the correct behavior and the food reward. So our dogs need to make an association between the behavior we want and the reinforcement within about 2 seconds. We are unfortunately very, very slow, so this buys us a little bit of time, a few seconds to get there. So the sound of the clicker or your marker word always means a reward is coming. So it's the behavior you want, click, reward. This is a technique of training that is used with all species, began mostly with marine mammals. You can't exactly put a leash on a dolphin. They usually use a whistle, and the whistle predicts they get a fish. They use it with animals in zoos in order to have them be more active members in their care. So teaching them targeting behaviors, presenting arms and legs and rears for examination. It can also be used with people. There's a method called tag teach. They're using with surgeons. Is being used in lots of different sports, gymnastics, dancing, things like that. So the benefits of clicker training. It accelerates learning. So a lot of old school training involved a lot of molding. I push the dog in this position. I pull them over here. I lure them down and then pull them down, things like that. When we mold our dogs, like push a butt down or pull into a position, yes, they get to that point, but it's to avoid the discomfort of that hand on their rear or the tug on that leash, not necessarily that they understand the behavior they're getting rewarded for. So clicker training can, because our dogs figure it out themselves, be established much quicker. So it strengthens that human-dog bond. We all like to be rewarded. It feeds that bond. It produces long-term recall. So my dog Sugar actually went through my certification program with me. We had to do a 10-part behavior chain. So that's a bunch of different tricks, one right after the other, pull them out, switch them around. I will say I don't usually ask Sugar to spin around or go through my legs or paw my leg, but if I cue her to do any of those behaviors, she still does it. It encourages creativity and initiative. So dogs are going to throw out whatever behaviors they think might get them a click. Please do this. And when our dogs are doing this, they're still in thinking mind. Forgives human mistakes. If you accidentally click, just give a treat. No big deal. Generates enthusiastic learners. So the reason we use a clicker, and I'll show you one here, is that it has a unique sound that your dog probably does not have an association with from anywhere else. And it's the same coming from anyone. So if you have multiple trainers in your home, multiple people in your house, it doesn't change what that click means depending on who's there. One meaning, the click always means a reward is coming. It's really instant and precise. You can click the second the behavior starts or stops. For Sugar, I had to click between barks in order to begin the process of learning. It's unemotional. It's not subject to your fear, frustration, anxiety. So if you can click the moment your dog notices something that you know might trigger them, we might be able to inhibit that reaction. That positive association itself can help inhibit a reaction. So the reason we're not going to be using force in training is that it inhibits behavior. And I know when we think about our reactive dogs, we want some of these behaviors inhibited. But I also don't want our dogs afraid to try new behaviors. And it doesn't teach our dog what to do. So I want you to start thinking not that you want your dog to just stop that barking, but what would you rather have them do instead? What is an incompatible behavior that they can do? Instead of charging towards the thing that's triggering to them, maybe we want them to look to us. And then we can make the decision, okay, we're going to get out of this situation, or I'm just going to keep you engaged with me while that situation passes. Doesn't stop reinforcement of unwanted behaviors. So with that trash on the floor, if we never move that trash, the dog's going to continue to go back to that trash, whether we have punished for it or not. It increases stress. I will venture to say that the fact that your dog is having these overreactions is an indication that they are already stressed. Their cortisol levels are high, their adrenaline is high every time that happens. I don't want to contribute to that stress, if at all possible. Decreases engagement. I've absolutely yelled at my dogs, and then walked in the same room as them and had all of them exit. I want your dogs to be as engaged with you as possible, because you are where it is safe. Can lead to or increase aggression. The classic example of this is the prong or shock collar on the dog who barks at the neighbor's dog. Bring the dog out, you decide you're going to correct them for that barking. You pull on that prong collar or you shock them when they start barking. Maybe it stops the behavior at that moment. But next time you go out, your dog might start barking. You might shock or pull on that. And then that behavior escalates. Why is that? Now, that dog they were uncomfortable with, or maybe just wanted to greet with a bark, predicts pain and discomfort to them. I want to get that dog. I want that dog gone. Rah, 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 rah. So that's an unintended association that we don't want to make. We don't know what associations our dogs are making in the moment of that punisher. And that's risky. What if there's a small child running by at the same time your dog gets shocked? Now small children may be the enemy. Small children predict pain to me. It can be really disempowering for the dogs. So remember back at the beginning when I was talking about reactivity being often a result of lack of choice. Our dogs don't have much choice in this world. They are on leashes, they are behind fences, they eat when we say they eat, they go out when we say they go out. I want to empower dogs to make different choices, okay? I want them to be turning to you, being like, oh my gosh, there's a dog over there. This means good things for me, right? Help me. Causes fear and mistrust. I want your dogs to trust you. I don't want them to be fearful of you or anything in the world as much as we can help. So, what I want you to start doing is observing for the precursors to a reaction. All right? So, yes, we all know what over-threshold, overreaction looks like. It's that whining, barking, lunging, pulling, growling, snapping, spinning, whatever it looks like for your dog. And many of your dogs, it may seem like it goes 0 to 60 like that. And it does, but I guarantee there's a lot of body language going on that will indicate to you, oh, my dog is struggling right now. My dog is starting to get tense. That's where the learning can occur. When they're already over the top, as you know, they're not responsive to their name. They're not responsive to much of anything. You're practically dragging them away. But if we can start being better observers of their behavior, we can ideally preempt and avoid that extreme over threshold. Some behaviors to look for that might be more subtle indicators of stress, that your dog may be more at risk of reacting if you see some of these behaviors. Things called displacement behaviors. Sniffing the ground. Yes, dogs sniff the ground. But there's a difference between a dog sniffing and following a trail with nice relaxed body, low tail, things like that, than a dog who may be putting their nose to the ground, popping up, looking around, putting nose to the ground, popping up, looking around, or continually going back to the same spot when there's nothing there, either observable or not. Scratching, so dropping and scratching. Some dogs are not comfortable wearing their collars or their harnesses out in the world, so sometimes we see scratching because of that. But if it's persistent and there's no reason for them to be itchy, really, that is a subtle sign of stress. We might see some, what Torg Rugas has called, calming signals. So that's yawning, lip licking. So the lip licking can either be that full tongue comes out and wraps around, or it can be little tongue flicks. Both are signs of stress. They haven't been eating anything. Their tongue's still coming out. Looking away, that avoidance. Turning away or moving slowly. Sometimes you'll see this in a dog park as dogs are running around and then there's one on the edge and then the big group of dogs comes towards them and they slow down. Way down. Stress reactions. We might see panting when it's not hot or they have not exerted themselves. Pupil dilation. Most of us don't notice that. Most of our dogs' eyes are pretty dark. It's hard to see. Shaking off adrenaline. That big... They're not wet, but they're shaking off. Sweating paws. This one you don't typically see that much, but if you're going to see it, you might see it in the classroom because of the rubberized black floor. Trembling or shaking, that's a pretty clear sign of I'm anxious, stressed, or fearful. Whale eyes. So what this is your dog turning all the way away, but keeping an eye on what's going on over there. So you see the whites of their eyes, but everything else seems to be pulling away. Hackling. So that's the piloerection. That hair along their back, sometimes all the way up their tail, sticking up. So after we see all of those sorts of things is when we start to see our dogs tipping over threshold. We start to lose some of those calming signals, some of the yawning, the lip licking, the moving. We see our dog's mouths close. Yes, a dog can have a relaxed, closed mouth, but you want to watch where their lip lies. If it's like they're pursing their lips, they're all the way up front, they're clenching those teeth, that's not a relaxed dog. You can see a happy dog with their mouth shut, and usually the lip line falls all the way back. So observe for that. The freeze. Their head gets stuck, their body gets stuck, their full body is stiff, their tail might be really, really high. That is a dog who is over threshold. You say their name, nothing happens. Then we move into the preparing to defend, that showing teeth, growling, barking, lunging. And then at the very top of that stress spectrum, we get to bites and other things like that. So I want you, as your assignment coming into this class, to start observing for those more subtle signs of stress, those things that come before that reaction. Mind you, I don't want you putting your dog in a situation where you know they're going to react just to do it. I think you're going to have plenty of time to watch their bodies. So observe. Do their tails come up? Do their tails go down? Do their ears come forward? Do they go back? Are they on high alert? Are their eyes bugging out of their head? Is their mouth open? Is it shut? Are they clenching their teeth? Are they leaning forward? Are they leaning back? Is the hair on their back coming up? Are they starting to whine? These are all things that may come before that big overt reaction that you're familiar with. And it's important to notice and recognize these because we can take them out of a situation if we're starting to see this. Our dog's body language is the only barometer we have for what's going on. We do not sense things in the same way they do. So we have to watch them. So I want you to come into this class thinking of this quote from Leslie McDevitt. Our goal is not merely to change behavior. It is to change how the dog is feeling. When your dog is feeling functional, he will behave functionally. So, for class, I want you to start jotting down some notes about your dog's body language, those precursors to a reaction. I want you to find some treats that they're willing to work for in multiple different circumstances. So for class, you will bring 3 values of treats. their kibble. So that's a very low value treat. I do find in reactive dog class, most dogs are not working for that because there are other dogs around, it's a new environment, other things like that. Then something a little higher value, chewy, smelly dog treats. And then something even higher value, hot dogs or cheese cut up, deli meat, steak, meatballs, things like that. So it's all about quantity. We want to make sure we have plenty of reinforcement. It's not about size. Things can be very, very tiny. You're going to want to bring a nice 6-foot leash, a flat standard leash, a flat buckle collar, harness, front attaching harness, or gentle leader. I prefer not to see a gentle leader unless they've been conditioned to wear it. I also want to make sure we don't have any flexi leads, chain, prong, or electric collars. So if your dog is on a prong because that's the only thing you feel like you have control of them with, I want to work to transition off of that. But if you feel safer coming to class with that on, I want you to bring that, but another option as well. So I want you to also introduce the clicker. So I know since we're doing this via video, you may not have a clicker yet. If you want to invest in one, fine. I like the iClick. You can probably find them on Amazon pretty affordably, or at some of the pet stores around if they're still open. So you can introduce the clicker to your dog. You could just sit there and click and treat and click and treat and click and treat. Make sure every time you click it's followed by a treat. I prefer to get some sort of behavior. So the way I like to introduce the clicker is wait for your dog to look up to you. And this doesn't mean eye contact, just orientation towards you. You click, drop the treat down to the floor. They go get that, gives them another opportunity to look up at you. Click, drop another treat down to the floor. So think of the click as taking a photograph of the behavior you want. You look to me, drop the treat. Okay? You can also use known behaviors. You can ask for a sit, click, reward. You also may want to toss the treat to the floor because I know dogs who are master sitters and will sit there forever. Keep in mind your dog's hearing is very good. You do not have to click in their face. You can click right by your side or behind you. If your dog seems to jump when you introduce that clicker, definitely try to dampen that noise by putting it behind you or maybe in your pocket. You could even put a little piece of fabric over it. If they continue to jump about with that, don't worry. Stop using the clicker and we will talk about some other options when we come to class. When you get to class, I will have you stay in your cars. And I will load each dog in one at a time. My goal in class is never to have a reaction, so we're trying our best to keep them under threshold. So we will rotate them in, get one dog calm, bring the next dog in, and each time a dog comes into class, I will have you be ready to play open bar. So what open bar is some counter conditioning without desensitizing. It's just feeding, while our dogs are hearing other dogs come in or something happening. They will be behind barriers, and the barrier you are behind or the section you are in class, unless we have some issue with dogs next to each other, will be the same area you're going to be in for the duration of the weeks you're in class. All right, thank you. I look forward to meeting you and your dogs. Please email me if you have any questions at adogseyeviewma, so adogseyeviewmassachusetts @gmail.com. Again, ADOGSEYEMA @gmail.com. I look forward to meeting you.